this is kind of where we move to longer-term solutions, as at least in terms of that which we feel will both reduce the likelihood of cyanobacteria blooms in Owasco Lake and which will slow down the rate of eutrophication, as our speakers have repeatedly mentioned. And the key to that is reducing nutrient loading. So we did not want to close the presentation section before we got to our Q&A without sharing at least some of the highlights of actions that are being taken to reduce nutrient loading. We used to focus as an association simply on phosphorus, but there is growing evidence that the cyanobacteria issue is related to a ratio between nitrogen and phosphorus. And so rather than controlling that ratio by adding phosphorus, which nobody in their right mind would advocate as a way of managing a lake, we're looking at the viability and the utility of those actions we're taking to see which will also reduce nitrogen. And it turns out there are efforts that we have in mind, which Rick will detail, are highly complementary in terms of the reduction of both phosphorus and nitrogen. So Rick, thank you so much for doing this, and it's all yours.
Thank you, Bob. We'll attempt to answer the question that we receive frequently after all the testing: what is being done? We know that reducing sediment and nutrient flow into the lake is our best option right now till further data is available. So as you can read, that's what this is about and what has happened and what is ongoing. This is a stream out near my house, and that's what it looks like after a heavy rain or snow melt. Obviously, sediment is flowing into the lake, and there is nutrients attached to that sediment. We want to reduce that. So I'm going to go through several projects and actions that are happening. First one we'll talk about is what our friends at the Cayuga County Soil and Water Conservation District, I will call the district in future references today, what they've done in the Dutch Hollow Brook restoration. In the Dutch Hollow Brook sub-watershed, the restoration action they've taken. Using a $200,000 grant, I believe the projects are done, and if I have it correct, there were 9 sites that they completed, 5 are in agricultural fields and 4 in stream bank erosion reduction. Is that correct? Did I have that right, Jason? Close? Okay. I'm going to show 3 different sites that some before and after pictures that they've work that they've done. If you can see right here, this field, obviously a serious erosion issue and ponding, and they were losing up to 6 tons of soil per acre per year in this field. Now, they graded this area, made a nice grass waterway. You can see it's kind of a swale, and between the grass that they've added and the mulch seeded waterway, they've eliminated that erosion problem or diminished it considerably, and 35 pounds of phosphorus have been saved. Just for reference, 1 pound of phosphorus can grow up to 500 pounds of algae or weeds. So every pound of phosphorus that doesn't get into the lake will help diminish the growth of algae and other weed growth. The next site is, again, another obviously gully problem, runoff, shown here. In this one, up to 8 tons per acre per year were lost of soil down the drain, literally, and off the field, which the farmers don't want to lose soil. Again, through their work, the grading, waterway filtration, erosion control measures, you can see mulching and seeding, they've eliminated that problem and are saving 55 pounds of phosphorus just from this one location. And the last example of the 3 that I have here, again, it's hard to tell, but there was some ponding here and erosion through this field, up close to 4 tons per acre per year, soil sediment loss. This is a little more obvious. It's much more of a swale appearance with filtration, Filtrex, a grass waterway, and this is what it looks like now. more recent history, a seeded waterway, and look at this number, 125 pounds of phosphorus just from this one site, staying on the field and not going into the lake or into the streams. You've seen these before, but this is these were where these projects were accomplished, and it's a very large sub-watershed, the second largest, as you heard before, from the inlet, and so those projects were accomplished, but much more need to be done, and we hope there will be more money for that in the future. This is what you heard earlier. This is the Dutch Hollow Brook. I'm going to now talk about money that ALLO has acquired, and our initial emphasis is in the Sucker Brook subwatershed and the Vaness Brook subwatershed. In the 2015 budget, ALLO was able to acquire funding up to $600,000, two-thirds of which we're going to use for projects just like what you just saw, that and working with the district and planning and designing, we're going to, starting this summer, apply and hopefully complete several of these projects. We have 2 years more funding to spread out with this money, but we'll get as many projects as we can accomplish this year. As I mentioned earlier, initially it's the Vaness Brook and Sucker Brook subwatersheds that we're going to focus on. We have, through cooperation with the district and meetings with Nick Colas, the county planning, he provided this very nifty map. As you can see on the right, the colored charts show from moderate to high nutrient loading potential within the Sucker Brook and Vaness. These two sites, I believe, are marshy wetlands we can't do anything about, but as you can tell, there's many potential areas that we can find to focus in on, narrow in on for the best bang for the buck, to imply best management practices to reduce nutrient loading in those locations. We'll do it in both sites. As of our collaborative effort and meetings, we have 14 sites picked out, and Jason, with the joint letter between ALLO and Jason, the district, he sent out just this past week to 14 different property owners, and hopefully they will come back and say, yes, come help us out, fix the problem on our property. Next effort is the road ditch stabilization and drainage projects. There are two organizations involved with that. You've heard about the Owasco Lake Watershed Inspection Program, DREW. They have received a $200,000 grant to try to stabilize up to 100 miles of ditches over the next 5 years in the watershed. It's been shown, and I think Dr. Happen talked about earlier, there's considerable sediment runoff through the ditches around the watershed. Unfortunately, ditches are not a part of the regulated or considered waterways of the state of New York, but they contribute as much as many other items or possibilities. Which, if you've been out to driven around the watershed and the roads, you'll see that they need some help. And with collaboration with, we were fortunate enough in ALLA to receive a $20,000 grant through Fox Toyota and Toyota National, and we're applying those funds in cooperation with the inspection program and the district to do some fund matching, fix ditches as much as we can around the lake. We've accomplished one so far. Well, this is an example of what is a ditch that that is causing sediment to run into the lake. This has recently been scraped off by Wyckoff Road. They have since put in some check dams to minimize some of the runoff. Here's another example of a culvert off of Fire Lane 23 on the east side of the lake that obviously that is a serious erosion control problem. But hopefully with the funds and the work done by the district and the direction of the inspector, Drew Snell, we will make that culvert look like what the district did over, I believe, on Mathers Road, however you say it, from the before and the after. We're going to try to do that as much as we can around the lake. This is a small portion of a ditch repair or stabilization that was done on Fire Lane 23. In this case, ALLA, with using our Toyota funds, paid for the rock, and the local homeowners down at the end of Fire Lane 23 paid for the contractor. It was about a 50-50 match. So in that case, that $20,000 can go a long way to fund more projects. As much as we can cost share, the better. One of my favorite things is what is called a sediment trap or an open-ended concrete bathtub. The district, it has a capability to build these, but you can see they put them, they're very simple in the design, but they're very effective in that you can put them in ditches and streams, and the water flows in here, collects the sediment. Here's one that's in operation, and again, very effective, simple operation. The only maintenance required, as I believe, is that periodically dig out the sediment and haul it off so they can be effective for their life. But again, a very cost-effective way to slow down and reduce sediment in our ditches and smaller streams. Another project that's been in the works for several years, and hopefully the construction will start this summer, is a restoration project in the Wasco Flats. Bruce Natalie, with the engineer with the county, has been overseeing this project, but the basic idea is to build large wetland basins, have gates near the inlet that during high flow situations they can raise the gates, flood out a certain area, put the gate down, trap that water, and by capturing that water and let the water soak in, the sediments with phosphorus and other nutrients will be trapped behind those and not continue to flow down the inlet into Wasco Lake. Amazing number that Bruce gave me was they're projecting that up to 100,000 pounds of weed and algae growth will be eliminated from the trapped phosphorus that is not going into the lake. The location for these projects up here on this portion of the inlet, or the Wasco Flats that is ground owned by the city of Auburn. You can't read it. Cayuga County owns the blue. It's more city-owned land here, and this is a recent Finger Lakes Land Trust acquisition or easement. A closer view of the area where the ponds or the wetland basins will be constructed, or there's one here. Here will be the gate near the inlet, flood out this area. Another gate, I believe, here for this flood out this area, and another gate here for the water to be trapped behind here. On to the next new idea. Not new, but in the last few years, we have a nutrient boom prototype developed by Doug Young from Spruce Haven Farm. It has the capability of spreading liquid manure on growing plants. Here's the picture, several pictures, but these lines are laid down, and since can you put them up higher than the growing plant, they will let the liquid manure be distributed between the plants. And historically, most of the time the manure is spread in the spring and fall when they don't have the equipment prior to this design to effectively spread on growing plants of any height. So it is showing great promise, and he's on us about a third or fourth prototype, I believe. But here's what it looks like before. This corn will look a little tired and dry, and this is with the boom. They've shown test out in the Midwest and on a local farm here that yields are increased considerably, and obviously less erosion and less runoff, and so it's a very promising technology, and we're supporting its development. Another thing that's happening, and the last number that Jason quoted me, that you may be driving around the watershed and seen fields this winter, past few winters, where there looks like there's grass growing inside the chopped down corn stalks. That's by design. That's winter cover crop. I'm not sure there's different grasses or plants that they put in, and that obviously provides a great benefit for moisture retention and lack of erosion over the wintertime from either wind or rain. So it's providing a benefit for all in that regard. And the other, I have two pictures here. The other is these new, not new, but there's, I know of only two so far that near where I live in the watershed, called water and sediment control basins. Here's the cover crop up off of Stone School Road. And this is one of two wascobies on a property near this, just a few, probably a half mile to the east. But you can see there's a large berm here in a shallow area. There's two. This is a gradual slope uphill, and there's another one of these, and here's the drainage pipe. These, they're like the words, like they're called, they're water and sediment control. And the good part is that they are effective in that regard, and the farmers can still plant over this ground. I want to talk, there's been some talk about septic systems. Cayuga County has a very good inspection protocol. The lakeshore owners have to have their property, their septic systems inspected every 2 years. Within 500 feet of the lake, it's every 3 years. If you're in a town or live in the watershed, it's every 5 years, and everywhere else in the county, it's 7 years. And according to Eileen O'Connor, there's only been an average throughout the whole county of a 2% failure rate, and it's even less of a failure rate for the lakeshore owners, probably because they're inspected more often. Unfortunately, in Tompkins County, they do not have this inspection protocol. There's efforts within the Water Quality Management Agency to try to establish that, because 25% of the land area of our watershed is in Tompkins County in the town of Groton. So we think that a protocol should be established to minimize, or at least find out if there's a problem with septic systems in that location, a portion of our watershed. There's debates about whether we should have a sewer line all around the lake. That's a topic for discussion, but I think personally, in some locations where the soils are very not have low capability for absorption and effective on absorption fields, that a sewer line is probably one of the better ideas, and I believe that happens. There's a new extension from Burtis Point to Koenig's Point on the Owasco system. One of the benefits of that is that particular area, I'm told, has very poor absorption capability, so maybe there was an issue there that is being fixed by having a sewer in that particular locale. Back to the district, there's probably, I think, at least two or three classes this month and the next month where they work with contractors and or the highway departments in the watershed, talking about, for contractors, how to prevent problems with sediment runoff from a project that's on the water near the lake. And with the highway departments, how can they better maintain their ditches in their towns, similar to that one ditch I showed you earlier where it was scraped clean and not planted yet. So there's better ways to do it. Maybe some of them will purchase those concrete bathtubs and put those in their ditches. But it requires maintenance and the ability to clean them out periodically. We have some representatives here from the relatively new Save Owasco Now. They have one of their priorities is to try to have New York DEC and to establish a total maximum daily load for Owasco Lake. This is happening over in Cayuga Lake. It's probably going to be established finally in May, but it's the total maximum daily loading of phosphorus into Owasco Lake. Once that's established, other steps can be followed to minimize the loading of phosphorus and nutrients into Owasco Lake. A similar plan, but a different focus and a complementary plan, watershed planning, water quality planning, is a 9 elements plan that is being fostered by the Cayuga County. According to, I'm told from DEC that if we have both of these plans, TMDL and 9 element, will have the gold standard for water quality, bettering the water quality in Owasco Lake. Those of you who've been on the lake, this is our favorite weed eater, weed harvester. They'll be out again this summer, and we help fund some of that money I'll receive from the state will be used to help pay for the use of this machine cutting the weeds, the aquatic vegetation around the lake. Improves the recreational capability, but also, while it doesn't treat a cause, it treats a symptom. The best guess that the hundreds of tons of weeds, if that's much, that or aquatic vegetation that they remove from the lake, equates to maybe up to 200 pounds of phosphorus that is physically taken out of the lake after one complete large lake cutting. So every little bit of phosphorus removed is better. And lastly, hopefully some of you have received the 10 things you can do handout. I've talked about land and streams and septics, and now let's talk about what you as a citizen can do. One of the primary things is minimize your phosphorus input into the lake. Your grass clippings, your fall leaves all have phosphorus. Don't put them in streams or ditches, because eventually it'll reach the lake. If you live along the lake, of course, you don't want to do that. Just to emphasize, one large bag of leaves contains approximately 1 pound of phosphorus. If that decomposes and flows into the lake, just add to the problem. As our President Bob Bauer says frequently, the lake doesn't care where the phosphorus comes from, it just wants less of it. So we all have a part in this, from agricultural to stream bank erosion. One detail I left out before I finish is that on stream banks, I read an interesting fact that in New York State, it's estimated that 70 tons of soil is lost for every mile of stream through stream bank erosion. That's a large amount. So, thank you.